Good afternoon and welcome. I'm so glad that you are here with us today, which for what I know is going to be an extremely meaningful and an important conversation. And so welcome. Hopefully you have your lunch, making sure you are nourishing yourself as we jump into this conversation. So my name is Paya Sample, and I am the founder of Peak Leaders Collective, where I have the deep privilege of walking alongside leaders to really help them have clarity with their leadership and lead in a way that's authentic to who they are and with courage. And also at Peak Leaders Collective, we really work to create spaces that honor leaders and where they are, and remind them of their brilliance and their genius so that they can be equipped to lead others in that same way. And so again, welcome. So glad you're here. And today we're going to be diving into a topic that I think is both necessary and, if I'm honest, like people feel like it's really uncomfortable. And that topic is cultural intelligence in leadership specifically, and how to build trust across diverse teams. And we're going to talk about these cultural differences and how they shape the way that trust is built, how it's perceived, and even how it's broken. And what are some things that we as leaders can do to repair that trust when that harm is broken. And so I'm honored to be having this conversation with someone that I deeply admire and have known over an extended period of time. And this is Herman Armstrong. He is a thoughtful coach and guide who really helps leaders grow in their cultural capacity and lead more inclusively. And so I'm going to bring Herman on board so he can share a little bit more about who he is and the work that he does, and then we'll get started. So welcome, Herman. Well, it's still morning time. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Pay. It's good to see you. Good to see
so
you.
Glad you're here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do so that people understand the lens and perspective that you bring to the table?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Herman Armstrong, glad to be with you in this session. I serve as owner and founder of Kathairo Solutions. Kathairo is a firm that helps leaders and organizations get over, what I call that culture wall. When there's issues in teams or communities based on differences of vantage points, backgrounds, opinions, and those things that you can't quite put your finger on, but there's something there. We walk with teams to get to the root of those relational issues. And I also serve as executive director of Restore St. Louis, a nonprofit that's been around for decades, focused on racial reconciliation and also mitigating the effects of poverty.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I said it in the intro, and I'll say it to you directly, how much I just admire you. And I am thankful every time our paths cross, oftentimes at many coffee shops here in St. Louis.
Indeed.
But more importantly, when we just get to sit down and just engage in some really thoughtful and deep conversation. And so I'm really excited to have your perspective and your expertise here with us today. And so I would love to start, and I want maybe if you can start us off by naming, like, what is cultural intelligence? Like, there are a lot of these buzzwords and phrases that are out here in this day and age, and you can Google many of these phrases and find a number of like definitions.
Yes.
But as you think about the work that you do, and specifically in the context of our conversation, as we think about leadership, how would you define cultural leadership, and why do you think it's so important for leaders to grow and understand this piece today?
Totally. Great question. And you're right. Google can be helpful or hurtful depending on what you find. Sure. Cultural intelligence starts with understanding one's own culture. So the vantage point they bring to any relationship or situation. Then that allows them to understand the fact that there is a variance of cultures in society. I think with that foundation, a leader or a team can then navigate cultural issues effectively, knowing when and how to adapt their behavior in various settings, knowing when it's appropriate and when it's not.
Yes. No, I love that. I love that, like, understanding for themselves so that they can adapt for those pieces. And I think when you say it that way, I think it really kind of points to the importance of like humility in this work and curiosity in this work. And so it's really not just like a head knowledge of, I know all the elements of the different cultural backgrounds, but being able to tap into and lean into that head knowledge and allow it to really impact your posture, your heart's posture toward those around you.
Most definitely, a humility and a deference to those that you are leading and serving, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so as you think about the work of leadership, so I know you work with leaders in a variety of contexts, like, why is this so important? Why is like developing, for one, like understanding and growing in your awareness, but also really developing this cultural intelligence important to leaders today, right now?
Most definitely. Many, many reasons. I think the first one that comes to mind when you ask that question is the fact that we live in a society where people can so easily polarize over differences, real or perceived. And so somebody says, well, I think X and you think Y, whether it's
Mhm.
about work, whether it's about family life, whether it's about, you know, political government landscape, whatever it is,
Mhm.
people now just over any type of disagreement are so prone to label somebody as the enemy or as
Mm.
the other, right?
Yeah,
And as you and I know, teams flourish with a diversity of perspectives involved. And so it's even more valuable for us to work with, recognize the talents and skills of people who do think differently than us and see things differently than we do. And so
Mhm.
that's why we need to understand that just because somebody sees things differently or has a different background, like no, this person is still a teammate, a friend, a family member,
Mhm.
whatever that relationship is, and to know how to lean into helping that relationship thrive.
Yeah, for sure. And I would even add into that idea of why it's so important is our world is becoming more, I would say, visibly diverse.
Yes.
Um, but I would even say like the diversity pieces have always been there.
Yes.
Um, but people, I think, tend to make assumptions that everyone in the room or in the space thinks just like me or
Yes.
has the same experiences and backgrounds as me. And I think now that our world and our society and organizations and companies and schools, wherever you're working, are becoming more diverse. It's now one of those pieces that's in your face. Like you can't ignore that we all have cultural backgrounds and differences that we bring to the table, and regardless of how we look. So just not just looking on the surface, but how do we see that as an asset, kind of what you named, and how do we help people grow in their comfortability in being in these diverse spaces and seeing that the diverse thinking, diverse experiences of the folks around us really do make us better, really allow us as an organization, as a family unit, as friendships, whatever that looks like, makes us better because we can see things in different ways. And so I do think there's so much happening in the world today, but also is pushing leaders to have to confront. I would say some of this and seeing that this why it's so important.
Totally. Yeah, the work landscape is becoming more globalized, and
Yes.
so all of us are continually, more regularly entering into more diverse spaces. And so, for
Hmm.
all the reasons that you just mentioned, a great need to have a more diverse vantage point and work
Hmm.
also all of us to work towards increasing our cultural intelligence for
Yes,
sure. Yeah.
for sure. And so as we think about the culture, the need for why we need to have these conversations and grow in this work today, but even more so, like the impact that our cultural differences can have on trust
Yes.
is a huge element. And so we know, like, you can Google this and find a common theme to say, like, trust is this foundational need of teams. Like, in
Yes.
order for teams to truly be effective and do the work and get the results that they're looking to have, research is clear. Like, people have to feel safe and have to feel connected within that team. And so, as we're talking about cultural intelligence, I also want to just create some kind of common definition around the word trust, or the phrase, the term
Yeah.
trust,
Yeah.
because it is, I would say it's a really gray term, right? And so
Mm,
it is this belief and this, the feeling that I am safe in some way, physically, but also emotionally,
yes.
maybe mentally with you as well. And I'm safe to be able to show up fully, to be vulnerable, to speak up, to make mistakes. And also, when I make those mistakes, I'm still going to be treated with dignity and
Yes.
respect.
Yes.
And there's this quote that I love from Charles Feltman, who wrote the book, the Thin Book of Trust.
Mm,
And the quote says, like, trust is, let me make sure I get it right. Trust is defined as choosing to risk making something that you value vulnerable to another person's actions. And
yeah.
so whether that is like a tangible piece, whether it's a part of my story, whether it's something I'm struggling with, like it is a decision that we have to make to say, I am choosing to take this risk to make this thing, this idea, this thought, this tangible thing vulnerable to you. And at the very least, I'm hoping that you are not going to cause harm to me.
Sure.
Right. And so, as we think about that being trust, another piece that I love about Feltman's work is that we have to have some ways to talk about trust, because it is this term that people look at it and can again add many definitions to it.
Mm.
And so as we're thinking about this conversation today, I thought it would be helpful to talk about the four elements that he talks about that make up trust. And he defines them as care. So the other person on the other side, like if it were you and I thinking about a work relationship of some sort, that I know that you care about my well-being just as much as yours, or you can't care about the work that I'm doing just as much as you care about your work. And so that element of care is a part of trust. The reliability, so meaning when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to follow through. So my actions matching my words. The sincerity piece of also being sincere about what I'm saying, what I'm going to do. And then the last piece is competence. So
Mm.
having the skills and the abilities and knowledge to actually do the work. And so I think that just helps us have this framework of when we're talking about trust, especially when I think about culture,
Mm.
understanding that there are many elements that go into trust can help us maybe start to understand where some of the breakdowns might happen as we think about care, sincerity, reliability, and competence. So is there anything that you would add as you're thinking about trust in the context of leadership and teams?
Sure, and I think you teasing that out is very important because trust can be a great term, and a lot of research does talk about the fact that trust is the foundation of a team, and that's why, because it has so many different elements of that care,
Mm-hmm.
of that safety, of
Mm-hmm.
being the building blocks, the foundation of a relationship. I
Mm-hmm.
think another sort of buzzword that's going around right now is the idea of psychological safety.
Yes.
An element of trust. Like I feel like you mentioned vulnerable to share what I feel, even
Yeah.
if I disagree, even if I make a mistake, I won't
Mm-hmm.
be ostracized or made fun of, but I feel mentally, emotionally safe to be who I truly am in this team. And
Yes.
even if we don't align or don't agree, right, there's still that care piece that's still
Yes.
present in the team.
Yes. And that psychological safety cannot happen if we don't have trust. So if we want people to honestly share and push back, I don't think this is a good idea, or here's some holes and gaps that I see in it. That's what we want to have. That needs to be happening in our teams. And so again, just kind of really points to the importance of having that trust piece. So
Indeed.
um, so we kind of define the cultural intelligence. We've talked about trust. Is there anything else that you would add specifically to culture? So like, how do you define culture? And then begin thinking about like, how do you see culture influencing how trust is built, or even sometimes how trust is broken within teams?
Sure, sure. So as you mentioned, many different definitions of culture. I think in coaching, to boil it down, I normally take it down to beliefs, values, and customs. Right. So
Mhm.
somebody thinking about who they are, what they do, and so those beliefs, those values, those customs shaping how a person sees the world, and
Yes.
also walking through, thinking through all of our cultures. Right, are based on our upbringing somehow.
Mhm.
So we explore our formative years, who we are, what made us who we are, which influences our beliefs, values, and customs, and how we approach society. I think to
Yes.
the second part of your question, right? Because we all have different cultures, people come from a variance of backgrounds. If we're not mindful that our culture is just one, our culture is valid,
Mhm.
valuable, but one of many other cultures in our
Mhm.
society, it's very easy to not take the vantage point of others into account in relationships. And so, if we're not mindful of that, it's easy to make a comment or a suggestion or not be mindful of how we're treating people in a way that may not even be a big deal to us, but can
Mhm.
be offensive or detrimental to somebody who comes from a different walk of life.
Yes, yes, for sure. And I think I love that definition that you use for culture. And it's so simple. And I think it helps us to truly see it as like it's not just these ideas and these beliefs and these customs,
Mm.
but how they influence
Yeah.
the way I make meaning or assumptions or judgments in the world around me. And so, and when you start even getting into because of the way that I see the world, I view it as normal. That
Yeah.
is like, this is
Yes.
the way that I think all folks should be viewing the world or considering the
Yes.
world. That it's so evident that we are set up to misstep
Totally.
because we again go through the world walking as if it's our way. We think everyone has thought like us, and so if we don't pause and again have that humility and begin to understand like like everyone did not grow up like me. Everyone did not, or even if they lived in the same neighborhood,
Yeah.
the messages and the stories and the ideas that were taught to them by their family, by the media, by school, by religious organizations really shape and impact the way that we make meaning of others, the way we add value to certain elements. So if we go back to those definitions of trust, or those elements of trust, of care, competence, sincerity, and reliability,
Totally.
because of my upbringing, like when I think of those four, they're depending on the relational piece of the with the other person, the dynamic with the person, I might prioritize. Actually, I do
Mm,
prioritize some of those elements over others.
mm,
So when it comes to work, right, and work and professional relationships, I tend to prioritize competence. Like that is the one that I lead with first. And so I see in my mind, I see that as, how folks might look at me. And so how do I make sure I am showing up in a competent way? But I
right.
also begin to like assess someone's trustworthiness
Mm,
on their competence as well. And so I think that sets us up to say, like, if that is the lens, or again, the piece that I'm bringing to the surface, I'm elevating, but someone else who has been socialized to think very differently and
mm,
elevates reliability or sincerity or another element, it just shows where we can begin to have some of those trust breakdowns.
sure. I
Sure.
think that's a fantastic point. And as you were talking in that last part, what came to mind is in some of my work, walking alongside a lot of faith-based nonprofits
Mm,
where competence is important, but what's
mhm,
primary, firstly, is care. And so
mhm,
the care for people internally, which goes externally. And if it's
mhm.
perceived that somebody doesn't care because they may want to, get down to business, right? Like whereas somebody can say one thing and somebody hears it a different way. And so
Absolutely.
being mindful of the culture of who we're working with
Yeah.
and how they're perceiving what we're saying and
Yeah.
communicating. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as we think about this, and you're already kind of starting to go there, but I want to like shift and talk about how it shows up in real life ways. It's not just this theory,
Sure.
right? That we have
Okay.
that our culture impacts the way we build trust or extend trust to others. But it shows up in our meetings, it shows up in conversations, it shows up in the silence between coworkers as well. And so I would love for you to share either a professional or personal story that kind of paints this picture that shows how complex trust is, and can be when you're navigating those cultural lines.
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. As I think about that question, I think about one instance in particular, walking alongside a group of individuals who wanted to start a nonprofit
Mm,
in an inner city area of a metropolitan city. And so they get their plans, they get their funding, they get
mm,
structure, and they start to, do work in the area,
mm,
and they're meeting people, and they're using the language of help. We're here,
mm,
we're excited, we're coming to help you. And in this particular situation, most of the people are also crossing socioeconomic lines and also
mm.
so a couple different barriers there.
Yeah,
And so as people are coming in saying, we're coming to help, many people in the community are hearing, we're better than you.
yeah,
People are hearing, you don't have it and we have it. Like we have what you need and you don't. And so from the beginning of this group's plan to try to be partners and
mhm,
build, um, that foundation of trust was broken from the very beginning because
mm,
of that lack of communication, that understanding breakdown.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there wasn't, you said broken from the beginning. There wasn't even a chance for it
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
for a seed to be planted because of some of those pieces that were missed.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. And so, if you're open to it, I would love to hear like how did you respond when you saw this, or did you see this in the
Yes.
moment?
Yes.
And what were some things that you did or helped to navigate,
Yeah.
as you saw this taking place?
So I saw it in the moment, and it was
Mm.
interesting for me because this group was actually wanting to do this work in the neighborhood where I was born and raised, and so I had a great
Oh,
sense
wow.
of empathy there, and so
Mhm.
being able to talk from firsthand experience. But one, recognize this group's desire to do good work, but also at the same time drill down that need for humility and understanding,
Mhm.
and say, hey, you have a good desire, but make sure that you're communicating in a way that shows that good desire. And so
Mhm.
we talked and had a few sessions and pointed out some gaps, right? That
Yeah.
everybody's doing this work, but they're coming from the outside. without the plan of building community partners, leaning into relationships and building that trust. And so, okay,
Mhm.
well, you all may think you know what the community needs, but build relationships, walk the
Yes.
streets, get to know people who are the current, civic leaders and faith leaders, who are the pillars who've been there for many, many years. Talk to
Mhm.
people, understand, learn from them. And so
Mhm.
leaning into that idea of humility, this group eventually turned it around and through partnership has a thriving organization today.
Mm. That's awesome. That's powerful. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
And as I think about experience that I had, you and I when we when we had coffee, was that last week, this week? I don't know. When we had coffee, we both are like, we have a plethora of stories that we can share. Like
Yes.
how do we narrow it down? But I had a few in mind, but as I was listening to you, this the experience that I had as like as one that was in this situation is the one I kind of want to talk about. And
Sure.
there are two arms to it. And so I'm working in an organization, brand new to a team. And I quickly realized with the other women that I was working with that they were walking into the relationship with some assumed trust, right?
Mm,
So it was
sure.
because you're on the team, I trust you, Paya, and
Mhm.
we're friends. Like it was a simply like this is and that was not the way that I had ever navigated, especially
Mhm.
professional relationships.
Mhm.
And so I didn't go into meeting someone and assume like you have my assumed trust until you break it.
Mm.
I kind of come more from the lens of like through relationship, through
Mhm.
time, like that trust has to be built.
Mhm.
People use the word earned, and I'm not necessarily thinking it needs to be earned. It needs to be
Sure.
built and established over time.
Yeah.
And so what I saw within the dynamics, and I can look back, of course, now and see it clearly. I didn't see it as clear in the moment,
Sure.
but realizing there was lots of tension. There was like a lot of wanting to hang out outside of school, outside of work, and wanting to do things
Mm.
together. And for me, it was like I need some time to get to know you to understand, like for
Mhm.
this trust to be established and to be built. And so I just remember it creating tension and having to have a lot of uncomfortable conversations to try and understand what was happening. Because when I was saying, oh, no, thanks, I'd rather not, it was being taken personally. It was being taken as like, I'm not a team player.
Sure.
When in reality, I was walking into the situation as like, this is a professional
Mhm.
relationship. And
Mhm.
this is how I tend to walk into these spaces. And so that was one example. And then similar is another with like the assumed trust, but more from um, my a leader to myself. The leader made assumptions that people will respect them and trust them because of the role and the title that they were in.
Mhm.
And so I learned that like over a course, a lot of time and just listening in and hearing things.
Sure. Sure.
But just again, the assumptions around when I step into this role, when I have this title, that all the folks who work with me will give me the trust and respect that I need.
Mm.
But again, just it created a lot of tension. It created um, a lot of stagnant. We weren't moving forward because there was this, you should have trust me, and there's you haven't done anything to show me that you trust me, that I should trust you yet.
Yeah.
So again, just really creating some tension and conflict. Um, on both sides when I again the person I was working with, but also in this leadership capacity. And so I think it just reminds us that this idea of really trying to build trust across cultures is hard. It's not easy work, but it is truly about like being intentional, being reflective, and having eyes to see
Yeah.
um, that those pieces are happening. So
Most definitely. And thank you for sharing both of those. And as you went through, one thing that came to mind was the need for teams that have been established for some time, especially with the
mm,
folks that have been around for some time, to pause,
yes.
especially getting ready for new people to talk. What are at this point some of our assumed dynamics?
Hmm.
In ways that people coming from the outside may not see firsthand or even may not agree with or may not align.
Hmm.
And so having those understood to assimilate better, to hire better, all of that, to understand who may or may not be a good fit for a team.
Yes, absolutely. I think I met with a client a couple of weeks ago and kind of working with her through a couple of things. And one of the things that she named is she went to a colleague because she could feel some distance. She felt tension And she went to the colleague and just said, I feel like I broke a rule and I didn't even know there was a rule that I broke.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
feel like that points to exactly what you're naming, that there are these rules and expectations that we all have around what work life looks like, what teams should look like, all of these pieces. And if we aren't communicating that, we are running the risk of creating tension and gaps and distance between those within our team. And so I think that happens more often, and folks just kind of sit back and don't know what to do about it.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I feel like this really kind of takes us into this next piece where I want to zoom out a little bit because this work is vulnerable.
Yes.
This work is hard, especially when you're in a leadership role where people are looking to you or you are called to do the developing of the folks around you. But again, I really believe this is one of the most important growth areas for leaders today. And so let's talk about like things that leaders can do. So now we kind of have a great understanding of what it is,
Right.
some ideas of or some examples of what it looks like in real life challenges. And so for folks who are in leadership roles or maybe aspiring to be in roles where they are responsible for managing a team, reporting into others, what is one? I know you probably have a whole book full of strategies. Let's just start. We'll go through a couple.
Sure.
What's one strategy you would recommend for leaders to do who really want to grow
Sure.
their cultural intelligence?
Sure. No, you make some great points there, especially in regards to leaders having more responsibility for identifying team culture and even shaping it, calling out those unwritten rules and things and blind spots and so forth. And so the need to, in some ways, be ahead of the curve, be ahead of the team in some ways of introspection. And so the first one that comes to mind is individual reflection, reflecting on the self that the leader is bringing, how they're engaging others. One question that most people in my work I've noticed have not stopped and just asked themselves is, what is my culture? Like you talked about, most of us use the word culture. It's not an unfamiliar word, but have we stopped to define it, and then have we defined what is our culture? What are my specific beliefs, values, and customs that make me who I am? And so that goes to cultural intelligence, understanding what I bring to the table, and then also in situations of cultural differences, I suggest that all leaders journal, if not daily, regularly, and maybe after instances where there seems to be difference of opinion or a cultural rift or just a lack of understanding, a good introspective question is, what did I perceive, right? And that's intentionally subjective. You're not calling somebody else out. You're not putting blame or anything like that. You're saying, what did I notice in that situation? So as you're finding your culture, better understanding yourself, you're also trying to better understand how you perceive interactions with other people.
Yes. And I would say, just to add on to that what is my culture? I've worked with so many folks who don't even know that's a question we should ask because there's an assumption that I don't have a culture.
Sure. Yes.
The culture is for the people in the minority or people who are very different than me. And so breaking down some of that misconception around you do have a culture.
Yes.
And I think there's quite a few frameworks out here that will really help people. And the two that I tend to point leaders and even teachers to, one, it's a cultural iceberg. You can Google this and see the cultural iceberg. And the one that I really like is Zaretta Hammond's culture tree, which just helps people to think about the surface, shallow, and deep parts of our culture. And oftentimes when people start saying and starting to explore my culture, they go to the surface. Like, these are the tangible, this is the food that I eat. This is the way I wear my hair. This is the way that I dress. Essentially these observable artifacts of someone's culture. And I think one of the things that leaders need to do is be able to go below the surface and see that is an element of your culture, but there are other pieces that are shaping that. So going below and saying, how do I identify or define friendship? What is my belief around concepts of time and physical space? What is my belief around when I don't know something? What am I supposed to do? How do I address conflict? All of those pieces, once we get below the surface, are such incredible insight for a leader to be aware, like, okay, this is actually the way that I'm showing up in this space and making assumptions about other people's actions based on that. And so those could be some tools to help people dig a little bit deeper into these different elements of my culture.
Most definitely. And even to your point of the tree analogy, as they're being introspective, journaling, reading, writing, right? Thinking about getting to the roots, getting
Mhm.
what's visible. And as you mentioned, getting to the why, I'm
Yes.
perceiving and presenting myself in certain ways.
Yes. Yes. And I'm a fan of journaling, so I agree with that's always a good one for
Oh,
leaders.
yes. Oh, yes.
Um, one other piece, so as we think, so that's one strategy. So if you're listening, write that down. That's one strategy is some of the individual reflective work of understanding and unpacking your own culture, and getting just some clarity of what's coloring your cultural lens.
Mhm.
The second strategy that I would share for leaders specifically, as we're thinking about trying to build that trust across diverse teams, is really understanding and getting to know each member of your team. Right.
Mm.
I think there is so much key information that you can gather by simply sitting with someone
Yeah.
and getting curious about who they are, what their aspirations and their roles are, what support looks like them for, and just being engaged in conversation. And one of the things that I think, I mean, and one of the ways we can do this is like I remember when I was a principal, when I specifically started the role, sent an email out to my staff and just said I would love to get to know you. I just want to meet and learn about who you are,
Yeah.
and learn about like what you're excited about for this upcoming year and all of these pieces. And I just gained such valuable insight
Mm.
in those conversations. And you're not going to start those conversations say, "What's your culture?" Don't do that, right? But you're gonna like just like tell me about yourself. Tell me about the work that you're doing. What
Yeah.
are your aspirations?
Yeah.
Right? What do
Yeah.
you do when things get hard and things get challenging? You're just becoming inquisitive and getting that information so that you can use it later, so that you can say, all right, how do I leverage these pieces of each person's individual stories?
Yeah.
And I would just encourage like for this to be an ongoing practice. This is not just a one time when you start the work or start in the role.
Mhm.
How do you engage in ongoing one time one-on-one conversations with those folks that you lead? One of the most powerful questions I remember asking folks was like, what does support look like for you?
Yes.
Because I mean, and you and I know this especially now, I tend to support the way that I think people should
Sure.
receive support.
Yeah.
Support. However, everyone doesn't see it like that. For some folks, it's like actually support looks like me coming to you and I'll tell you exactly what it is that I need.
Hmm.
So actually, not you just offering these ideas is not helpful to me,
Right.
right? But understanding that and knowing those pieces helped me again to really build connection and really build trust with those individuals,
Sure.
and it kept me from again not wasn't intending
Mm.
to kind of have these cultural missteps where I am, without even knowing it, kind of crossing a cultural line and
Mm.
creating and or disrupting trust in some way
Sure.
simply because I wasn't aware. And so I really think having those one-on-one conversations with your team and just getting to know them as people, as individual, as the people behind the positions,
Yes. Yeah.
and thinking about like now that I know these pieces about who they are, what do they need from me in order to feel safe, connected, and seen and valued?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I fully echo that. I mean, just from the personal standpoint, I have been blessed, I'll say, to have employees over my career who have said to me, like, you care about me as a person.
Mm,
That comes from early on in my career, having supervisors who only wanted output and productivity. And I didn't
mhm,
feel care and concern for me. And so
mm,
that instilled a mindset of, okay, I want to make sure people know that I care about them as a whole. I care about
mhm,
the roots of who they
mhm.
are.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So as you think about, so we have the individual reflection, we have the get to know your team one on one.
Yeah.
Do you have another strategy that you would recommend for leaders as they're working to grow and build trust across these diverse teams?
Totally. The other one I would add is just intentional pausing,
Mm,
especially before going into interactions, one on ones, but especially group meetings, where that this diverse group will be getting into the thick of some work or just, talking about something that could be potentially difficult. As we talk
mhm,
about defining culture, the need for humility, leaders, especially who set the tone, pausing before some of these interactions to sort of reorient themselves and remember the need for humility.
mm,
Remember the need to say, hey, I bring in one vantage point, but there are many vantage points here just understanding that there's work to be done, but then there's also some relational dynamics to be
Yes.
mindful of as well. And so to sort of check oneself, like, hey, I'm
Mhm.
not coming in thinking that I'm the norm or I'm the standard. I'm coming into a conversation understanding that there are many different vantage points coming here. We want to value everyone and
Mhm.
recognize the worth of all the vantage points here as we go through our work. So
Yes. Yes. That I love it. I'm so glad you named that because that is such a key practice to just slowing down instead of jumping to conclusions.
yes, yes,
And I think even at when in that space, like that generous listening, so listening with intent to understand, not to defend, not to fix, is another way to really build trust
yes,
across difference as well.
yeah, yeah.
And so I think one last strategy I would name is if we go back to that definition of trust
Mhm.
and thinking about those four key elements. I think in those conversations, either one on one or even like team dynamics, is using those elements. So naming to our teams, like when we talk about trust here in this organization, here is what we mean. Here are the four elements, like as we think about, or the key elements that we want to focus on. But asking your team members to individually pause and reflect on what are the things that build up trust in this element, and what are the things that I can see that really erode the trust
Sure,
within this element, right? And
sure.
so in all four, so whether it's care, sincerity, reliability, or competence, helping us to realize like there are specific things that really help me to build trust in this area when I see it exhibited from a teammate or a colleague. But there are also things that folks do that really start to get in the way. So, like the enemy of that trust element, and being able to pause and reflect on it individually, but then being able to share that those insights in a conversation with their team. So
Yes,
really seeing that it's not just this individual work, but teams are made up of all these unique relationships.
yes.
And teams are difficult. They are challenging. They are hard because of all the individual relationships between the members of the team, between the member of the team and the leader, and then
Mm,
between each individual and the team itself. Like there's so many arrows going. And
totally.
so doing that individual reflection to kind of say, here are the things that build trust in these areas or
Yes.
break down trust, and then
Yeah,
engage in a conversation with folks around the table. So people are beginning to understand
yeah.
what are some of the things that might get in the way. And in those conversations, there might be something that comes up where it's like, well, you see this as a breakdown in trust. I
Yes,
don't.
yes.
The most beautiful thing that can happen from that point is a conversation
Most definitely.
conversation to talk about, okay, so if this were to happen, like how are we going to address this? What are we going to do? So
Mm,
having some of those proactive conversations and that intentional work
yeah,
before huge conflicts arise, I think are really, really important.
yeah, yeah. The only thing I'll add to that is just last two words: proactivity and
Yes.
intentionality. Being mindful
Mhm.
beforehand. Let's not wait till we clash. Let's talk
Yes.
about our expectations on the front end so we can
Yes.
be ready for what's ahead for sure.
Yes. Yes. Okay. All right. So we got some foundational pieces. We shared some strategies
Yes.
of things that leaders can do. But now let's talk about like the moments that we wish we would have handled better.
Mm,
So even with good intentions, harm happens. Misunderstandings, unspoken tensions,
yep.
and broken trust take place, right?
Mm.
And so when that happens, I would love for you to kind of share what do you coach leaders to do?
Sure. No, just to that end, as I'm thinking about your question, first thing comes to mind, right? Relationships are hard. None of
Mhm.
us are perfect, different vantage points.
Yes.
Anytime you cross cultures, that makes it even more difficult, difficult vantage points. So that makes it difficult.
Mhm.
So, one, as the leader, to just know that because of that, offenses will happen. You will have
Mhm.
misunderstandings. You will have missteps. You will say things that you wish you should not have said. People will do the same back to you. Those things will happen. So first, just having that mindset of humility.
Mhm.
Just going in with that sense of deference and
Mhm.
understanding and having that resolve in yourself that when you offend somebody, go to them. Go to them and apologize. Be very clear. If you think you offended somebody, go to them and ask. Hey,
Mhm.
I think this may have been a misstep. Can
Yeah.
you please inform me? Especially as the leader, just setting that tone of humility, recognizing the humanity of everybody involved, but going to that person and being very clear, apologizing, hearing what that person has to say back, and then you communicating as a leader, This is how I want to be sure that this doesn't happen again, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, if it's two employees, so bringing them to the table, having them
Mm-hmm.
talk, setting a tone of respect, humility, deference, listening, and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Even from the leadership standpoint, the other thing that comes to mind is talking to other leaders and other organizations,
Mm-hmm.
ideally mentors who've walked this path, farther along than you are, who've made
Mm-hmm.
steps, who've worked with multicultural teams. Say, hey, I dropped the ball here.
Yeah.
Please help me. Please provide some guidance. Please provide some intentional strategies about how I can, jump back in the game and
Mm-hmm.
rectify things. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I love that. I love especially when you say whether you know you've done something to offend or even if you think,
yeah,
the
yeah.
role as a leader is to still move, right? To take that action and go and ask or apologize when it's necessary. I think the other pieces I would just add on to this as leaders thinking about engaging in that conversation is um, whether someone comes to you and says to you that you've offended them or you've done the offending.
Mm,
In the midst of that conversation, I think it's really important for leaders to really center the impact of
mm,
their actions and words more than the intent. I
mm,
think oftentimes it feels easier to simply name, I didn't mean to. That's
mm,
not what I was trying to do. And where that is important,
mhm,
when we only talk about the intent,
mhm.
the harmed or the hurt that has happened to the other individual
Yeah,
gets ignored and it actually never gets addressed. And there's not really an opportunity for healing and repair and restoration to take
yeah,
place.
yeah.
And so I think it's really important in the midst of those conversations to withhold your thoughts around your intent, but
Yes,
to listen and understand the impact of your words,
yeah,
impact of your actions, to so that you can really think about, although I didn't intend, it still hurts.
yeah,
It still is rupturing trust in some way or some capacity.
yeah,
And then I think within that conversation, once you understand the impact of your words or your harm or all of those pieces, you can actually do better work in moving
yes,
forward. Better is not the right word, more effective work in moving forward,
yeah.
as well as when you feel like you're ready to make an apology. We don't
Mm,
want to hear those apologies like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. That actually, again, is ignoring the harm, but truly understanding how it impacted someone's heart and the way they're showing up in that space, then gives you a chance to truly name to them, like, I'm so sorry
yeah,
for this harm that it caused for you.
yeah,
And then being humble enough to say, like, what do you need from me moving forward?
yes,
Like,
yes. An apology that focuses on intent can create more harm, can
mm-hmm,
increase the offense. And as
yes.
you're talking, I thought about one more tool that I use in coaching to that end. It's
Mm-hmm,
called empathy map. Empathy map. You guys can look
mm-hmm,
Google one of those. That's a good search on Google. You can look up the empathy,
mm-hmm.
and it just walks people through what I said, but also intentional steps to think through. But what did they hear? And so, how do I gauge between the two and see from the vantage point of the other person? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love kind of adding on to like talking to other leaders. So like after realizing you made this offense
Yes.
and reflecting on it, there is still additional work after the initial
Yes.
conversation. So
Totally.
as leaders, like we also have to then go and say and get curious within ourselves, what biases or what were the stories that were happening or that I was, replaying over and over in my mind that caused me to say that thing, to make me think it's okay,
Totally.
to kind of grow in your curiosity about like what led to that,
Yes.
and then taking that commitment of saying like I'm going to learn and I'm going to do better. And so it just doesn't stop in that, like I said I'm sorry,
Mm,
but actually committing to showing up in a different way is a way to really work to repair broken trust, but also to rebuild it
yes.
with that individual.
Agreed. Yes, indeed.
So yeah. All right. And so we are about close to the end, but I do want to make sure there's time. If you are listening in, I would love for you to type in any questions that you might have for us. We want to be able to answer those. And also, I have a couple of questions that came up before our session that I would love for us to start talking through. And if others come in, we'll answer those as well.
Sure.
Um, So one of the questions, and this is a one I actually hear quite a bit, is
Mhm.
can I lead across cultures if my own experience is limited?
Sure,
And so,
sure,
like, can I be a leader to this diverse
sure.
team when the world and my life
Mhm,
is not that diverse?
mhm, mhm.
So, what would you say to a leader that says that?
Well, first, it's not for the faint of heart. It will be a journey, but yes, with firstly having that mindset of humility,
Mhm,
communicating that. I think about my first management position, relatively young, a lot of employees with diverse backgrounds, much older than me, and I
mhm.
thought I could fake it. So day one, hey guys, you know things I don't know. Mistakes, please help me. Like walk
Yes.
alongside me. I'm apologizing in advance. So being
Mhm.
clear about that, understanding there are many things you don't know, having that humble mindset, and then also engaging in training and coaching, having
Yes.
other leaders around you, having mentors, being able to regularly check in with yourself and others so you can advance in that journey. So here are my
Mhm.
gaps, here are my blind spots. I'm recognizing this. I want to grow, and I'm taking intentionality to grow in these areas. So
Yes.
yes, with a desire to grow, with humility, and then taking intentional steps to grow in those
Yes.
areas.
Yes. That's a great answer. I think the only like I kudos and agree everything with what you said. And I think just like that, having that posture of saying, how can I grow in listening better,
Yes,
asking better questions, right? And so
yes,
like in the midst of this, one skill you can work on is asking thoughtful questions, inviting folks to share their stories and their experiences and really work to stop making those assumptions.
yeah,
And so, really, just really seeing your team as an opportunity, just like you said,
yeah,
to say, "Yes, I'm going to learn from you because I don't have those experiences yet."
yeah, yes. And, and,
That's a
and
great
so, and so that in as your vantage point grows, you'll ask better questions.
Yes,
So yeah,
yes, for
you want
sure.
to-
Awesome, awesome. All right, and so we have one more question, and I can feel the tension in this one. It says, "What if I sense there's something going on, or there's some kind of tension on my team,
sure,
and no one's talking about it?"
sure,
And so I think this happens probably more often than we would like to say. But as you think about this leader who's trying to grow in their cultural intelligence, but also building trust across these teams,
yeah.
what would you encourage or invite someone to do?
You have to talk about it in
Mhm,
safe and controlled ways. As people build tension in teams over offenses, they may get used to not talking about it, but it will come out. If
mhm.
there's something egregious or large that's not addressed, it'll end up coming out over somebody using a copier in front of you,
Yes.
or in front of you in line somewhere over something small, it will blow up. And so, as
Mm,
a leader, you have to talk about it. I suggest for leaders that notice something, some tension in the air. One, do that reflection. Two, talk individually to people that you trust on the team to gauge. So others
mm,
who have good cultural sensitivity as well to see where they're coming from to add their vantage point. And when you realize the need to bring something to the table, having that conversation sooner rather than later, uh,
mhm.
being clear about what needs to be addressed, being
Yes.
clear about what identifying the issue, and also identifying ground rules of respect and valuing everybody's vantage point. But yes, 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 with the right guardrails, do not avoid it. Talk
Yeah.
about it. Avoiding it always makes it worse. Always.
Yes. Yes. That tension that's unspoken is still shaping the team. It's
Yes.
just doing it silently, right? It is
Yes.
just silently doing it. And our job as leaders are to be the one that brings up to the surface what we're
Yes.
noticing. Like that is our
Yes.
job, and it's a
Yes.
way to model to our team that for one, you're in tune and you're aware,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you're not afraid to address it. And so, like
Yeah.
as a leader, I think sometimes I hear a lot of leaders thinking like they have to have all the answers, and I don't believe that's true. But I think
Mm.
as a leader, you want to be able to create conditions where this truth can emerge, right? So
Yes.
just like you named, I think
Mm.
you could say something in the midst of the team and just saying, "I'm just feeling like something feels off." We don't have to name it right now. I'm actually going to follow up and have some individual conversations with all of you.
Yeah.
But I really want you to know, like, this is a safe space where we're going to be
Yeah.
honest and talk about this.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
having those one-on-one conversations and saying, like, what's your experience been like on the
Yes.
team? And is there anything I might be missing or I'm not seeing clearly? to really bring their insight into it so that you can really move forward as a leader,
Mm,
to move toward healing, move toward repair,
yeah.
which I believe is a powerful act of leadership. And to be able to model that for your team is more powerful than I think we tend to understand. So,
Most definitely. And to your point, leaders do not have all the answers. You never
right.
will. A phrase I use at times, though, is that leaders are navigators. You think about
Yes.
like a physical landscape of unknown territory, and so leaders are curious and courageous. We,
Yes.
we want to get to the root of what's going on, and we'll take steps into the unknown
Yes.
because we want to grow. We want our team to do better. Yeah.
Yes. I love that. I love that. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Herman, this conversation has been such a gift. And so I just thank you so
That's,
much for your wisdom and for your heart. And for those of you who are here live or you're listening to it later, I hope you really kind of think about those strategies that we named, like those 4 strategies of the individual reflection as a way to be able to grow ourselves in this cultural intelligence, understanding and getting to know your team individually, doing that internal pause before entering into spaces, and then helping our team define what gets in the way of trust for them individually and bringing that as a part of the team conversation. And so,
yes.
so those are some great strategies. And we even kind of talked about things that you can do to repair when you see that harm is done.
Mm,
Going to the person individually and asking if you made an offense or apologizing to them if you know that you did. Really working to center that impact so that you can make an authentic and real apology to them, and also connecting with other leaders and doing some of the individual work necessary to show up in different ways and rebuild that trust. And so we've covered a lot in our time. So as you think about, like, I'm thinking about a leader who might just be starting this work, who's saying like,
sure.
okay, I'm going to get started, but where do I start? Because it feels so overwhelming and so big. What advice, one piece of advice would you give to that leader on where to start?
Advice for leaders starting out, the first word that comes to mind is just humility.
Mm,
Humility, and even what you touched on already, Paya, of just asking great questions, asking, being curious, being mindful of that. I would also point people to my blog. I write a
mm,
lot about leadership, culture, bite-sized chunks about how to do that. And so website is below my name. Kathairo.com. There's a blog there. And
mhm.
so for the experienced leader or the nascent leader starting out, but just you know directive points about how we can do this well. A lot from my own journey of figuring it out and walking
Mhm.
with other leaders as well. But humility,
Yeah.
humility, being mindful of what we don't know and asking great questions to be better leaders.
Yes. Yes. And that was going to be the same advice that I named, is just getting curious about yourself and understanding that you have a story, that you have a culture that is shaping you, whether you know it's there or not, that your culture, your assumptions, your defaults are there. And how do we work to grow your awareness,
Mm,
so that you can create room for empathy, connection, and deeper trust to take place. So awesome. Well, Herman, again, thank you so much for joining us. How can folks stay connected with you?
yes, yes, yes. So the blog, the website, kathairo.com, it's our firm's website, and also Instagram, the Rev Rights. I post there often as well, insights on faith, leadership, and culture. So you can find me in those two avenues.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And if you're here, then you know how to find me on LinkedIn. But also, my website is there below, peakleaderscollective.com. And again, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. These conversations aren't always easy,
Mm,
but they are deeply worth it. And you do not have to be perfect to
mm.
begin, you just have to be willing. So, again, thank you so much for showing up and joining us today. And I just encourage you to keep leading with courage and with care. Take care.